We are live, boys.
Woo!
Just
We
making
did it.
sure.
After a long off season, the Nebraskabilities boys are back.
Oh, we are back, and I think the curse is lifted.
Well, it has to be now
That's
since
what Frank says.
We did a lot of things.
If it isn't lifted by now, I don't know what else we could do.
I know.
there we go. Okay. Yep, I'm seeing it on my Facebook page. So
Yep.
should be live there. Should be on YouTube, and I think we are good to go.
We're golden.
So see it on YouTube at least.
Now
Well, that's a
just
good start.
wait and see if people. Yeah, there we go. Well,
All right.
We're doing it.
public. There we go. All right. We are here. We are live, and we are just waiting for people to come in.
Yeah. So what all did you guys think of the spring game? Andy, you were there. What
was the atmosphere?
Yeah.
I mean, it was cold. People were still fired up. I mean, if you didn't watch the game or had any idea, it was about 40, probably 45-ish and very windy by the time the kickoff happened. And, despite that, I think, people were still jacked up because it's still first year, new head coach, new optimism about the whole team and everything. It was people cleared out more after halftime just because I think, since it wasn't like a meaningful game per se, that people didn't really want to stick around for it in the weather, and I don't blame them. But just even going through the tunnel walk, that's it's not a true traditional tunnel walk, but you still get fired up hearing that music, getting jacked, and then they did the unveiling of the new Herbie, and we'll talk more about that later because on paper and on print, the new Herbie looks really cool. But then the mascot that they put out, I was like, this is not what I envisioned that they were going to do.
Yeah,
For that.
that reminded me of like what's his name, Purdue Pete or whatever, and how
Yeah.
it's like
not quite that bad.
soulless, like how soulless they look. Oh man,
I'd still high five Herbie. I wouldn't get within a 5-mile radius of Purdue Pete.
Yes. Yeah, I don't want to be anywhere near Purdue Pete.
So, for those unaware of what the new Herbie looks like, we have live footage here of
Oh yeah.
him.
Oh, there it
And
is.
This is what we see here.
That's my new favorite picture.
Even the guy behind him definitely has some thoughts.
Oh my god! If you didn't watch the intro or see any clips on Twitter, he came out of the tunnel on a motorcycle to introduce the whole new look thing. But that's how I'm gonna remember Herbie the rest of my time going forward. Now it's just that singular nightmare fuel picture right there in our face.
You're gonna go to sleep tonight, and this is all you're gonna be able to see is just that picture. It's gonna be great.
I love
All right,
it.
well, do we want to just get into the game, kind of talk about it?
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, I will start since I'm the one that brought it up, I guess. It's obviously the spring game. There's not, we're not really ever gonna until we actually get live games going again in the fall. We aren't really going to see too much. Obviously, most coaches aren't going to show their entire playbook to the world in a spring game. Generally, that's looked at as good coaching, but who knows?
Right.
But what I did like to see, at least just as from an overall perspective, is that there's a much bigger emphasis on a fullback, which everybody that is born and raised in Nebraska on the football team, like watching the football team growing up, knows how big of a deal that is, or at least was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was nice to see that. It was nice to see that Rule he seems very engaged with the team while they're out there, even though it is essentially a glorified practice. I did also like the fact that it was full speed all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And that we also what was I just gonna say? I lost my train of thought. That we also see just kind of the sprinkles of what he wanted to do differently
Right.
with the team, and I think it's refreshing to see. Now, granted, this whole year is going to be a comparison to like, well, what did Scott do that he doesn't do, or vice versa, and what did Mickey do? It's like we're going to have that; it's going to happen. But no, I think Rule and the coaches and the way they ran full speed, and they even had starters in up until the end of the fourth quarter. I think too. Like not all of them, but they had quite a few people that will probably be starting playing a full 4-quarter game. So,
Oh yeah,
I
mean, I know they would rotate the QBs in and out, and Sims was still in there in that fourth quarter, and I was a little surprised by that, considering as we've talked about, you have about 6 or 7 QBs on the roster right now, and going into fall camp, the big talk is going to be Sims versus Thompson, and just throughout the offseason, if nobody's heard or if you haven't heard or anything, Casey underwent just a hand procedure that he had injured last year during the Illinois game, I believe, or it was one of those games that he got injured and got taken out of. Finally went under surgery this offseason and just kind of been recovering from that. He's thrown a little bit during the spring camp, just from the press conferences that Rule and Satterfield have given, but he hasn't done like full speed reps yet. But they said he's going to be good to go by fall camp time. So, going into that fall camp QB battle, I think is going to be very intriguing for Nebraska, because it'll be the first time that we haven't had like a presumed starter going into fall camp. I still think, given that what Casey did last year and just his veteran experience and everything, he's probably the heavy favorite going into fall camp to be the starter. But the way Sims played today and just the way that the coaches talk about Sims, just how he plays and his mobility and everything, it's tough not to see that he's going to give Casey a good run for his money to be the starter. And this is all, of course, going to assume that Casey's just on a full track to being 100% by the time fall camp rolls around too. But I think just from the few he played a lot today, but just from the few passes that he had downfield and being able to maneuver and roll out of the pocket today, I think Sims was, he was much more impressive than at least that I thought he was going to be. You just never know with transfer QBs that he had more playing experience coming from Georgia Tech than most of our other transfer QBs that come in here. But you just never know what you're going to get from a transfer QB. Transfers are always great, but you also look at it at the same time as playing devil's advocate. Why did they transfer from said school? What made them transfer from Georgia Tech or Georgia, or wherever they are? Was it playing time? Were they just not a good fit there? So on and so forth. So you kind of got to look at it both ways. But outside of that, I thought he played exceptionally well today, just given that it's the first time that the public has really seen him in a Nebraska uniform playing as QB number 1 in the spring. But like I said, that'll change come fall camp if Casey's 100% healthy. And like I said, it's going to be nice to have a QB battle in fall where you're not going in assuming that it was Adrian being the starter, that Tommy Armstrong or Taylor or anybody like that. You go into fall camp going, if Rule can go one or two ways. Can you go with Casey and the experience, or you can have a 1-2 QB punch battle, but I don't know how high I am on that idea of having multiple QBs go in and out throughout a game either. You kind of want consistency with your offense. But outside of that, Heinrich Harbaugh played. Matt Rule has talked a lot of praise about Heinrich this spring camp and everything like that. And I think he proved today that he does have that ability to push to be the number 2 quarterback, if not be a for sure number 3 quarterback. Because if Nebraska football history has taught us anything, that the minute our starter goes down, historically we have not had a very good backup quarterback to come in and take over the game.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious though, like with the quarterback situation, that it's definitely going to be one of two options. It's either
Mhm,
going to be Casey or Jeff Sims.
mhm,
Mhm.
Probably nobody else. Maybe
Yep.
Harbaugh
right.
didn't look too bad, but like he's probably
And
number 3.
yeah,
Sorry, Chuba.
I mean,
Sorry, Chuba.
we saw all besides Casey. I don't know if I don't remember seeing Smothers in the game today at all. But I mean, we saw everybody else play at quarterback today. We saw Chuba, we saw Richard Torres, who was who was the freshman that was a Scott recruit from last year. And then the Ole Miss transfer, Jack Wosh, I think is his name. Um,
Mhm.
that he got some playing time today too, and he was kind of a transfer that nobody really talked about or knew about until like he showed up at practice. And I mean, he came in here as a redshirt freshman, so I don't know how much playing time he ever had at Ole Miss. But your quarterback room is 6, 7 guys deep, and I know I won't be surprised if we see one or two of them leave kind of within the next week or so here, just after they sit down with the coaches after spring evaluation and camp. But um, yeah, I mean, I don't remember a time recently where we've had even 5 potential good quarterbacks going into fall camp at all. For sure, like you said, Zach, we'll have a 1 versus 2 for sure. But all these guys that we saw play today, I mean, Matt Rule is really high on their QB potential and playing time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that room. Really, all of the offense, but yeah, that's kind of my in depth on the quarterbacks right now. I think the running back room is going to be really interesting to watch too, because I won't be surprised if one guy leaves from that room between Ramir, AJ, Anthony, Gabe Irvin. I mean, there's potential for any one of those 4 guys to be the number 1 starting running back next year. And I know Rule has been high on Gabe Irvin this entire spring camp, but it's very interesting that any one of those 4 can be the starter next year, and we have absolutely no idea who the number 1 running back is right now.
Hopefully, we won't see his little what did we call it last year? Random Ramirez.
Yes, random Ramirez.
Hopefully, we'll have some consistency there to where we can,
Between, I think Kevin Suits tweeted out just kind of like the stats and yardages from today's games, and Anthony had the most rushing attempts. He had 14 yards, but I mean, Ramir had 6 for 35, Anthony 14 for 34, AJ Allen 8 for 24, and then your other 2 leading rushers are Chuba and Heinrich. So, kind of spreading around. I'm sure the coaches don't even know who they want their number 1 running back to be going into fall either. They may not go with the number 1 running back either going into fall camp, or come out of it. But I think between those 4 guys, I mean, any one of them has the potential to be a starting number 1 running back. And I'm sure as they go through their evaluations, I won't be surprised if one of them leaves.
I'm sure it'll happen
because I bet they have they have the potential to be a starter here. I'm sure they're gonna have like such a higher potential to be a starter somewhere else too if they realize that. But if they all decide to stick, then yeah, right. If they decide to stick around, then Rule and his staff are doing something right with keeping these guys around, and whatever he's telling them is working. It's just, yeah, they all have these flashes, and then they all have some not so great flashes. I mean, we'll get into the fumbles later because there were a lot of fumbles today that I'm sure they're not too particularly happy about. But
that's the one thing that I kind of took away from just all the press conferences that Matt Rule has had, is that and I mean, obviously, I basing that on what I'm about to say is not fair because when the Eagles, then they hired Nick Sirianni, the first thing he said that he wants to do is have a fundamentally sound football team, and they made it to the Super Bowl last year. I'd say that's not too bad. But then Matt Rule said the same thing pretty much, and he said that he's very much like he wants to focus on those fundamentals, which to me is probably a good thing. You probably want your team to be fundamentally sound, but I'm taking from it that it's a much more like simple approach to how he wants to coach the team. But we'll see if that bears any fruit. But it should be at least interesting, I think.
Yeah, it's I just don't know who they want right now to be their number one running back, and that might be a good problem to have too. Maybe they're just hoping that somebody going into fall camp just emerges and takes over as the number one. I mean, if you had to pick somebody, I mean, I think you lean on Anthony Grant just because of experience between the running back room of who has played more consistently recently. Out of those four, Anthony has the most experience just from last year of being a starter. But they all want to be involved. And Rule said he's loved what Ramir and Gabe have done in spring camps, and it's like, well, those are guys that we hardly ever saw under Scott. So I don't know if it's just a fresh set of eyes, or if are they really that good, and just the coaching held them back or somewhat like that. But not that I want to dwindle on the past regime anymore. We're looking forward to a new era, but it begs to ask, if these guys stuck around after a new head coach. So either whatever Rule is telling them is working, or they really do have really good potential to be a really good running back here. Especially like you had mentioned before, Zach, if we're going to start running fullback traps and fullback sets, I mean, you're going to need a power horse running back.
Bring on the fullback, baby.
Yes.
Bring it back.
And I don't think they even have like a designated fullback position. I'm pretty sure it's just going to be a monster tight end that they just convert to a fullback. Or Rule's going to have to start recruiting fullbacks, because I don't know how many of those breeds are left in the world of high school athletics now.
Just imagine Fidoni at fullback.
He's got to stay healthy. I mean, that's always been his thing, holding him back, is just he always seems to tear his ACL every year.
Yeah. Nate, what do you think? We kind of keep talking over you, and I'm sure you want to get some thoughts out there.
Yeah, no, I was just impressed. I mean, it was kind of what we were expecting to see out of a spring game, where they just kind of pretty well balanced attack of trying to get the ball to everyone, trying to get everyone a little look here and there. But yeah, Anthony Grant led the team with 14 carries, so I think that at least says something to where they're at the very least leaning with respect to a running back room. All the other guys are probably vying for that second position, I'd have to say. But again, like you said, Andy, there's been a lot of praise for Gabe Irvin and even Ramir Johnson from the coaching staff. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think it'll be a good thing to have a quarterback and a running back kind of battle there. I think success will breed success there. And it should be fun to watch from kind of an entire perspective. But yeah, I was pretty impressed with the team. The offensive line actually kind of showed up a bit, so I'm sure. Again, it's just a spring game, so we'll see where that actually goes in the regular season. But it's nice to see them not just getting completely blown up.
I forgot completely that I thought that the offensive line actually was really, really well held up really well.
Yeah.
And I also really think, and I know nothing about, I'm not like, you could sit me down in a room and ask me to describe a scheme from I'm not real great with that, but the 3-3-5 that Tony White is running on defense, that also looks like, if we get the right guys, that looks like that could be a really key thing for our defense. And I liked what I saw for the most part there. Worst part about the spring game for me is that you never really know, like, it's like our offense looks really good or the defense is really bad. We're not for sure. Like, you're never really for sure which it is. At least I'm not. But and then I will just remind people that might be tuning in late. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can chat with us. We've already had a couple. My lovely brother says he disagrees, as well as
comment was too, but whatever Jet says, don't listen to him.
And then a good friend of mine and my wife's, Deb, says go Big Red. Absolutely. So I mean, the game was the game. Of all the spring games, that was one of them, kind of thing. I did kind of want to talk about, and I was curious on your guys' thoughts, but just like Matt Rule in general, like this is really the first time that we've talked about it really in any kind of depth. We can get to the nitty gritty of the game later. I just, this is the first that we've seen of Matt Rule's team. Anything that has finally come out. So far, I think he's done well. I do really, really like his. Demeanor. In a couple of the press conferences, he said multiple times something along the lines of being like, the one comment he made early on when they started practice this fall or spring was, he said that the team is very coachable. He says he doesn't know if they're good, but they're coachable. And I don't know. There's some breath of fresh air that comes with that. I think that transparency. It's like when even your own coach can finally say, "Oh, hey, like we might not be good," but I still maintain that him failing in the NFL, which he has alluded to many times that he failed in the NFL, I think that really helps kind of bring him back down to earth of college football. But he seems to be at least a good salesman to the kids. So hopefully that actually translates to some wins for us. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, like you had mentioned, the last time that we recorded a podcast was, I don't know, 4 or 5 days after he got hired. And, we were the whole fallout of the Mickey thing too at the same time. So just from that point to now, and I always go back to like, it's easy to say that he's a very likable coach. He is doing the right things. He's doing what Nebraska wants him to do. And half of that is like, yes, that is Matt Rule. That is just what he does. And he was going to do that regardless of where he was. And at the same time, I'm like, do we think about that too? Do we think about it like that because the bar was so low that was set that whatever he did, he was going to exceed expectations regardless? And not that, like I said, I don't want to focus too much on Scott and everything, but it's just he set the bar just so incredibly low that it's like, no matter who hired was probably going to exceed that bar regardless. And then Matt Rule just, triple jumps and he's like very much above the bar. But, half of that is, it's just, it wasn't a very high bar to pass and win over Nebraska fans just from the past tenure. But at the same time, that's also just Matt Rule and what he is like and what he does. The first things that I remember we all started seeing was after he hired his assistant coaches and everything. I mean, they were out exploring the state, taking pictures of whatever small town they were in that day at time, talking to recruits from that city, and I remember at some point they asked him during a press conference, it's like, he wants to make that high school commitment, even if your kids don't come and coach for me, I want you to know that, as the Nebraska head coach, I am here for your kids. I'm here for you. Other high school coaches too. If you want to send your kids my way, I would be happy and love to coach them type thing. So it's just one of those things. It's nice to see that he's making that high school establishment connection here in Nebraska. Just because, I mean, Nebraska has missed out on a lot of in-state talent that has gone elsewhere and done very, very good things at other colleges and in the NFL level as well. So it's just nice to see that, he's saying that, you're a highly talented kid, might not come play for me, but I want you to know that I will always be here trying to do my best, trying to make connections with you and your school to get your kids to come and play for me, because that's what I want as a coach. And, it's tough to say that Scott, we don't know if Scott was doing that, because just the difference between him and Rule is very much more social media savvy than Scott ever was. So, you can't really say that Scott might not have been doing that, because he was probably a lot more behind the scenes stuff, but it's just a nice fresh of breath there. It's so nice and refreshing to see that Rule is being out there, just being open and just being more community involved that we never really saw with Scott at all. But like I said, comparing him to Scott, I mean, it's not a very high bar to pass to exceed those expectations. So as far as, I mean, it's, his tenure is always going to be defined by, the wins and losses at the end of the day. You can have the best personality, you can have the best character, but knowing Nebraska football, it's going to come down to, are you going to win those games? That is going to make and break your career here at Nebraska. So, with that, that's just kind of my first impressions and thoughts before we could dive into the assistant coaches a little bit. I mean, not that I know very much about them, but
the only ones that I felt were not, I shouldn't say of note, but the ones that I think are the key takeaways are Satterfield and Tony White, offensive defense. But what do you think, Nate, on Rule? Like, what's your impression?
I definitely kind of agree with Andy. He's doing a lot of the legwork that we have kind of longed to see for a while, where a lot of the, like you mentioned, he's going to different communities within the state, and whether or not they actually have any players that are going to come to Nebraska or not, he's at least doing that legwork and getting out there, meeting the coaches, getting involved with the people around the state, and kind of just sending that note out to people that, like, hey, we're gonna be here for you if you guys are here for us, and we're gonna kind of play this back and forth, where we're kind of learning from each other as well. And I think that's going to be an important takeaway going forward. I don't know that it'll do necessarily a whole lot the first couple seasons, but once you really foster those relationships with those other coaches and schools within the communities, it'll be really open up that door to bring some of those in-state talent back to Nebraska, hopefully. And not that the in-state talent is the only piece of the puzzle that we're missing, but it'll definitely, I don't know. It's always nice to be able to rally behind the kind of in-state guy. We're like, hey, I know where that is, or I have a friend that lived in that town, or someone teaches there, or whatever. It's always nice to be able to rally behind someone like that. And so, as far as his tenure, I think I agree with Andy too. It's going to come down to the wins or losses, but so far he's doing all the right things that he needs to do to win over the fans and really get the fan support back into it. I think there was a bit of a concern that kind of with the Scott Frost tenure that fans were getting a little complacent, a little, I don't know,
apathetic.
Looking away. Apathetic is a great word for it, I'd say. Where we're just seeing the same thing over and over again with no real positive progress. And so I think right now we're seeing a total kind of 180 from what that tenure was. And even with Mickey Joseph, he had good press conferences and all that, but he wasn't always the most, I don't know, available within the community, if that makes any sense. Whereas Matt Rule is going to all these different functions and diners and whatnot. And
we can't forget about him being on SmackDown.
Yeah,
that was great. That was awesome.
It's just a shame they didn't invite him into the ring.
Right.
Well, they wanted to keep it fair for the other wrestlers. They can't have him beating everybody. It's going to be real unfortunate though if, like, because on paper, and I think you said this earlier, Andy, he's doing everything on paper. And I know every coach is aware of this too, but it's like, unless, if we don't get any wins, you can be the greatest. Mike Riley, you can be the greatest guy ever. You can be the nicest guy ever, be an absolute great coach for the players. But if it doesn't result in what you're out there that you want, which is wins, and I'm not saying that we're going to bring back the 90s by any means, but, if it doesn't result in wins, it's going to result in no longer Matt Rule. I do think he's got a formula for success, obviously. I mean, you look at his track record with Baylor and Temple, and he did some good stuff there. And I think, obviously his goal getting to the NFL, every football coach wants to get to the NFL and be a head coach. It didn't work out for him. He's acknowledged that. And so I think college football is like right in that sweet spot for him. Hopefully. I mean, we'll see. What else did we want to talk about? I guess, we can transition over into the coaches, I guess. Like I said, I don't know too many. Except for, I did notice, I can't remember their names. I'm really bad about that, but I noticed that, like, he's picking people from a bunch of different areas. So like I think it was the tight, maybe not the tight end coach, whatever coach.
From
I think
Texas.
yes.
Yeah, that's that. I don't
Yep.
remember his name, but yeah,
I
the
think it's
high school
Wager.
head coach.
It's like Bill Wager or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he's picking all these coaches from different areas, and opening up the different like the recruiting pipelines. Now, again, we have to see, but it's like they were hitting the ground as soon as they were hired, and they went out and got kids. Another one, I think, another one that is real big on discussion, or at least deserves discussion, is Garrett McGuire, the 24-year-old, I think,
Yes.
wide receiver coach.
That one is a big topic.
That one. So Nebraska, the social media teams or whatever, they put out a video kind of just detailing his background, and like it's like a 7-minute video, I think, just like who he is and like, you know, what he's coaching. That was really well done. If you guys haven't seen it, I will probably share it to you later. But it's a really well done video. Definitely got me interested in just like how, you know, someone I'm almost 30 and it's like, dang, he's like gonna go potentially he's gonna be a wide receiver coach. Like that kid's making way more money than I am. That's nuts.
There's some receivers that are probably the same age as him too, being coached by him.
And it was funny too because he was talking about and he's had a couple of press conferences, and he talks about like watching a bunch of NFL tape and just like trying to emulate, you know, a bunch of guys. And he was working with Rule in Carolina, so he was working on an NFL team too. I don't think it was anything like major. I don't necessarily think it was like the wide receiver coach, but he was doing something. So he obviously knows his stuff. And again, that comes down to you got to trust the head coach to make those decisions, because if you don't, then you know you lose the locker room, you lose your fan base, all that. So I mean, I'll be curious to see, but I mean, also the wide receivers look pretty decent today. Yeah. Especially Billy Kemp. He was one. He was one that I was like, wow, he stuck out real good.
And that's kind of the discussion that I was wondering too. Was, you know, you lose Trey Palmer, you lose your absolute number one go-to deep threat guy. So now you look at who's left. You know, who is, you know, even if he's not a deep threat guy, who's going to take over at that number one wide receiver position where, you know, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7, like, you know, you can go to this guy and guarantee that he's going to make the catch, get you the first down. Like, who is going to be that guy this year? And like we saw today, Billy Kemp, the transfer from Virginia, he had like 3 or 4 catches, but, you know, those catches that he did have, you know, he stood out very, very well. With that, you have Marcus Washington returning from last year too. He was kind of like the number 2, in a sense, behind Trey Palmer from last year. So he might be able to step up. And then you have the return stories of Isaiah Garcia Castaneda and Xavier Betts. You know, Xavier left the team last year, didn't know if he was ever going to play football again, you know, then comes back this year, rejoins the team again. And Isaiah entered the transfer portal, but never ultimately ended up anywhere. So he just decided to stay. So those are your kind of like top 4, I guess, receivers that with experience, I suppose, of who they have right now. I don't remember any of the other names that were announced today, but, you know, just going off those 4 off the top of my head of guys that have had experience that, you know, hopefully one of them is going to be your number 1 wide receiver going into fall camp. It's just, who is that person going to be? And, you know, we won't find out until game 1 when whoever Casey or Jeff is thrown to for wide receiver options. But it's, you know, are any of them going to be a deep threat guy, or are they just going to be a for sure hands guy like Jordan Westerkamp was? You know, he was never a deep threat guy, but he was always the guy, you know, you can go to on a 3rd down. Like, yeah, he's going to make the catch and get us the first down for us. So, you know, it'll be a wait and see, but that room is kind of up in the air too of who is going to emerge as the top guy out of that room. Cause it's really, you know, Xavier hasn't played football in, you know, a year and a half, probably, like competitive actual football. That's just not practice or a spring game or anything like that. And I don't know what Isaiah was doing when he entered the transfer portal, because I think he stayed in school and just continued school, but didn't play football at all. So outside of that, then you have Billy Kemp and Marcus Washington, who were your notable experienced guys, I suppose. So that room is going to be really interesting to see come fall and come game one of who is going to emerge. And, Nebraska might get another transfer or two here before the portal closes for spring for receiving options. So it's that room. I'm also really like all of the offense. I'm intrigued of how that's going to look because even if you throw in tight ends, absolutely have no idea who's going to emerge as a tight end. Is Fedoni going to be healthy enough? Borkature had a lot of targets and catches today too. So, he might be a number one tight end option, but that room is also up in the air because I have absolutely no idea what that's going to look like either. I'm sure they want it to be Fedoni if he's healthy enough and can go full speed, but he's never played a full game at Nebraska and not been hurt either. So just really, all of the offense in general, kind of expanding from the wide receiver room, but with that, I think what this topic start with Garrett McGuire.
Just the coaches in general.
It kind of went elsewhere, but going back to Garrett McGuire, I mean, that's Matt Rule has a history of hiring young and up and coming coaches, and they go on to do better and better things. So I kind of always look at Sean McVay is a prime example, and he's also a diamond in the rough of a head coach that just excels at what he did. But, I think Rule is probably trying to look at Garrett McGuire like this is, just a young up and coming coach that is obviously going to go on and do bigger and better things. So, I think once you get over the aspect that he's probably coaching kids the exact same age as him or within a year or two, it's interesting to see how the wide receiver room responds to his leadership too. It's like, why are we taking orders from a kid that's like the exact same age to me? Why do I have to listen to him type thing? So, yeah. So that if you just throw Garrett in with the wide receiver room, that whole complex will be interesting to see how that develops over the summer into fall camp. But that's outside of that. I mean, of the other coaches, I haven't really done a deep dive into any of them, and I don't know if we really are going to know much more until we start getting to competitive games and start blaming one position group or another.
Start firing people into the sun.
Until we start firing people into the sun. I don't know how these coaches are going to be until they actually start doing it.
Speaking of, I mean, today was a pretty good day overall. I didn't think there was much needing to be fired into the sun, but do we have anybody? Do we have anything that needs to be fired into the sun?
Well, I like the attempts to fake punt. I like the confidence, but both of them got stuffed before Buschini could even get past the line of scrimmage. So
that's just how good our defense is. That's just how good our defense is.
That's also another takeaway you could look at.
That's clearly what it is.
I like the confidence of telling Buschini, if you could see it, run for it, but he did both times that he got stuffed. So I don't know if they need to work on that or if he just needs to just punt and do what his job is.
Who knows?
But I don't know if I have an official fire under the sun just because it's a spring game. You get what you get out of it. It's not going to be. Well, yeah, Jet Little Red got fired. We all want, except for Nate, I guess. Everybody wants Little Red to be fired into the sun.
See, we can't. Oh, what was that comment you said the other day? By the way, that little fire the new Herbie costume into the sun. I could maybe get behind that. What did Andy say the other day though in our group chat? It was like, oh, because now now we can go into the curse part of things.
The curse is lifted.
Frank sold
we
it.
Apologize to Frank.
And then we brought back old Herbie. So then I think the other thing that you said we need to do is sacrifice Lillard at the 50-yard line. Yes. I was like, yes, and I'm behind that all the way. I mean, granted, he's probably gone now, but
just take a little knife and just pop him. That's all you got to do. Just pop the inflatable. Just pop him. That's all you got to do.
We're gonna start up and we'll bring back Bo and have him do it.
Yes, I'm sure Bo would.
Bring back Bo and have his cat that he was holding take care of it.
Oh,
just add extra layers all on top of this.
But I mean, speaking of that, and just being at the game and watching that whole ceremony for Frank and everything, I thought it was really cool. the very first play of the game, they ran that fullback trap, and Rule stopped the ball after that play, went over and gave it to Frank. Just some nice symbolism there of acknowledging what Frank has done all for Nebraska and Nebraska football, being as a player, assistant head coach, and eventually a head coach. And then the halftime tribute to where whenever they finish the new locker room on the new stadium, practice facility that they're building, it'll be named after Frank. So that's also a very nice tribute that they're doing for him and everything that he's done for Nebraska. So hopefully the curse gods realize that we are trying everything that we can in our power to lift the curse off Nebraska and just finally set us free. Because after apologizing to Frank, that was the big numero uno. I don't know what more is left anymore.
Like we said, they're all doing the right
Hopefully
thing.
nothing. Hopefully
Yeah.
this is the this is what really pushes us over the top here. Is
It's that the corner has been turned, I think, officially.
Yep.
And we're gonna find a real test when we start with Minnesota on the year, which I'm still I like and dislike on a Thursday. I like opening against Minnesota just because it's like, okay, go out and do the damn thing, But on the other side of it, it's like, darn it, it'd be nice to get just a nice a warm-up game. And now, granted, I shouldn't say that because no game in the past 5 years for Nebraska has been a warm-up game.
Nope.
Even though
haven't proven
even
that.
the ones that we very clearly won, it's like there were still moments where it's like this isn't going well. Nate, I know we kind of missed it. I think again we keep talking over Nate and forgetting to include him. Did you have any thoughts on any of the coaches before we get too far stranded from it?
Not necessarily. I think.
All right, good. Moving on.
Go ahead. No, I just think I've been impressed with how the recruiting trail has gone with a lot of the coaches. It seems like a lot of the coaches that he has hired have been really, really involved with recruiting and trying to get out to different places and get involved with a lot of the kids they're bringing in. I think it's something we've seen in the past. It's just something that hasn't been quite as visible because they're all active on social media, typing out their emojis and whatnot, confusing us all. But I think that's been something fun to see. Is they're getting out there again. Everyone's doing the legwork. It's good on paper. We'll see what it actually translates to in the fall, but it's exciting to be a Husker fan right now. We got Willis McGahee Jr. to commit to us for next year. So
linebacker, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the coaches are doing a really, really good job on just being they're out there recruiting. And I mean I'm sure the previous tenure was out there recruiting too. And I think you'd said earlier, Andy, where they're like they might have been more like behind the scenes. And I can also kind of see where like Scott not being in the public eye is I'm sure it wasn't real easy for him to go out in public just because, he was a celebrity. He was a Nebraska celebrity for all intents and purposes. And I can totally see that. Like he's probably like, I don't want to deal with people all the time. So maybe there is some fair leeway we can give him there. But I'm trying to find this old tweet because you just reminded me of not only that, but there's the old cryptic tweets from Matt Rule. Haven't seen those for a while. But then there was one that Ed
that ultimately turned out just to be nothing
that we know of.
That we know of.
No, if you're right.
Then there was one of Ed Foley. He had like a picture of a Runza in his car. He's like said something like got to try this out or something, and I'm pretty sure that like broke the entirety of the Husker Reddit thread. I was like, this is funny. Everybody's like, he's the chosen one. But he was also one that I think a lot of people were fired up too because he does the special teams. And I think a lot of people were like excited because he had done really good with special teams in previous places. So, and we kind of saw that today. The special teams, Walt, and that. It's still a roller coaster by all accounts, but it looked better. I was absolutely shocked to see a 49-yard field goal go in. Wind helped. Wind helped, but
And
hey, the kick was straight. It went through the uprights. It did the job. So,
Mhm.
what did you guys think of the? Okay, I tuned in just after the kickoff had started, so I think they probably explained it, but they
Mhm.
did like the XFL style kickoff.
Yes, and I think I think the NFL has also talked about doing this too. I don't hate it. I don't. I'd have to look into the rules and see if it's the same for onside, or if onsides are still the same thing, or if they just get rid of onsides and do like a 4th and 20 situation or whatever that is that they propose. But I don't hate the new kickoff. Um, and for those that didn't see, it's basically the receiving team starts on I think it was like the 30-yard line or whatever, and then the kicking team starts on 10 yards away at like the 40-yard line, or it might be 5 yards away. I don't know, one or the other. And then you have just your one lone guy back to receive the kick. Place kicker kicks it, and nobody moves until the returner touches the ball. And then from there, it's like a normal kickoff. But yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, definitely if it's proven to reduce injuries, which is the main reason in the first place why they're doing it. But just from what I've watched, I mean, the longest kickoff I think was maybe got to the 35, 40-yard line. So it's not like it proved that, the returner has a better advantage to get more yards. I mean, most of them got back to like the 20 or 25-yard line. So essentially a touchback. But, I wouldn't be mad to see it. I just think just from it'll be a different point of view if they actually do change that, because we're all just so used to the regular kickoff, and just kind of especially that first kickoff of the game where everybody's so pumped and you see the kicking team if you're kicking off swaying, moving, getting fired up, ready to go down and hit somebody. I think that might change a little bit just from a fan and atmosphere experience of you just have your place kicker all alone by himself, and then you kick off and nobody moves until the ball is touched. That might be a little bit different of a atmosphere situation for the fans, but yeah, just those were my observation. It's not like it hurt or helped one side or the other. I mean, it's still the minute the returner had the ball, he still got back to the 20 or 25-yard line. So I don't think it hurt or helped either side or gave one side an advantage over the other, but it definitely was. I thought it looked a little bit better. But we'll see if they ever implement it in college football or the NFL or anything like that. But it's definitely a cool idea if they ever want to go ahead and do it in the future, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was. I think a big thing of it was it's supposed to be for player safety, just so you're not having a lot of those more high speed kind of hits within games. So from that perspective, I suppose it's a good thing. I don't really have I don't know. I'm not really swayed either way. I'd be fine with either.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously you want to keep players safe, but I do like like you said, the fanfare of it is fun to be able to just get into the groove of.
Right.
Yeah, kick off the
and that just
right.
And that just might take time to get used to, if they ever do change it. But just at least from the Nebraska experience, it's always been the "Can You Feel It" song right before they kick off, or Zombie Nation, or some other variety song like that. It's just everybody's jacked, everybody's ready to see somebody run full speed ahead and go jack somebody. So that might be a little bit different. It might take time getting used to, but obviously the concussion just in the football world is just a big topic right now. So if it reduces that and everything like that, then we're all for it.
Sure.
Unless you're Tua and you seem to get concussions every hit.
Well, that's different. I think that might be a Dolphins problem, not a Tua problem. But that's neither here nor there. They are also talking about changing a couple of the other rules too. I think now in the last 2 minutes or something, it's either the last 2 minutes or first downs don't stop the clock or something like that. I don't know if you guys caught that.
So,
yeah,
it's the continuous clock.
It's
type
the
thing.
Same thing the NFL has, I think, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. To where obviously incomplete passes to stop the clock, but first downs don't stop the clock and everything like that until you get under 2 minutes of probably the second and fourth quarter, I would assume. I don't know if they'll do a 2-minute warning type, TV break, timeout, whatever, but
roll those ads, Andy.
right, I know. Yeah, trust they'll find some way. It's especially with the Big Ten signing that CBS, NBC, Fox deal, all of that. They'll find a way to get their money.
You said
sure.
CVS. And I was like, what? Did I miss that one?
The Big Ten on CBS, which will be weird because it'll be like a Penn State Rutgers game at 2:30 in the afternoon.
The Big Ten on a CVS receipt.
Yes,
those receipts are already long enough. Let's not make them longer. I say that as somebody that's bought things from CVS like twice in my life, and I went in to buy like one thing, and that receipt comes out this long. It's like, good Lord, what the hell?
Yeah, I don't know if the clock thing would be like to get college kids accustomed to the NFL type style play, or if it'll be to speed up college play or anything like that. I could see both of them being a reason why, but I don't know if it'll change how I watch college football. Like, I'm not going to watch because the clock's too fast or anything like that. It might take some time getting used to. It's like, why didn't the clock stop at a first down? Because it probably does change your strategy a little bit as a college coach too, when you're so used to having that, and then all of a sudden you have to be like, this is NFL style type of game clock. I got to adjust and coach that strategy too. So, if they do ever implement it, you might see more sped up, no huddle type offenses, but not if Rule doesn't want to do that either. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they stick with it or not.
Matt Rule went to the NFL and brought this rule back with him. He's playing 4D chess here.
He knew what he was doing. They did say they were talking about the clock changes and whatnot on TV though too. And obviously, Andy, you being at the game, you wouldn't have heard that so much, but right, unless you went and watched it on TV real quick. But they mentioned that the two guys that were talking, they said that they liked the change because it'll help speed the game up a little bit. So not that I've ever really felt. I mean, I'm sure all three of us can agree with this. We're all football junkies. Like, I've never thought a football game was too long, I guess, other than like the ones that seem to take forever, like that have however many overtimes. But at a certain point, when they get to like third or fourth overtime, it's like, okay, now this is starting to get interesting. Like, who's gonna finally
just
break? But yeah, outside of that, I mean, it's not like the whole MLB change with the pitch clock and everything now. Sounds like,
which that has helped
a lot of people are saying that's helped a lot. So, but this isn't nearly a sweeping change like that, at least. So,
no,
it will be different, especially if the first down. Just having it in my head the whole time, watching it, it's like, yeah, first down, the clock should stop. Then be like, oh, right. No, it doesn't, but
right.
It's not too bad. Well, not too much else, I don't think, but I suppose we can, I suppose we can get real wily with it and see based on the spring game. Let's, we can make predictions and then we can revisit this, come the fall, but, I'm going to let you guys start. Because I don't want to fall on my sword too quick.
It's always tough because I mean the spring game is fun. It's kind of, if you really want to be a sicko and dissect a spring game, I mean you can, but you always got to take it with a grain of salt of like, this is another scrimmage that they just had for spring camp. This isn't necessarily what we're going to see in the fall type thing, but you can look at it both ways. Is you can predict this based on Rule's track record as a college coach, where year one is usually pretty crappy and then it gets better along the way. The thing that you also have to take into account is, he's not taking over, Temple, or he's not taking over a scandalous Baylor school with like 30 scholarship players or anything like that. He's coming in with talent that's already here, or everything like that. Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Appreciate the opportunity.
So you're looking at, I think Rule said a few days, or it was either a couple days ago on somebody's national podcast or something like that. But they had asked Matt Rule, how he's felt about coming into this situation compared to Temple and Baylor. And over the spring camp, he said, like, yeah, coming in here and doing spring camp and everything feels a lot to him like they're already in year 2 versus, what he had to experience going into Temple and into Baylor. So it's kind of one of those is you look at those situations, but then he is coming into Nebraska with talent and players that are here is, just can you develop them and get them to where they are? And his track record has proven that he can do that. So you can lean optimistic and, obviously like Jet say, go undefeated or you can be more realistic and, realistically, I do see a path to at least a bowl game. I do see 6 wins. It's just, year 1, and there's so many unknowns of the offense in general and the defense. I think I texted you guys, or I at least put in the game notes, is, I think the defense will take a step back, at least from last year. There are just some returning names, Gifford, Farmer, Henrich, all those guys, but, it's a new defense for all of them. It's a new look. It's, are you going to be super optimistic going into year 1, or are you going to be more realistic and, see another 3-4 win season? And as much as I want to see 6-6, I mean, right now I'm still looking at like a 4-8, 5-7 season. Just because, I mean, they should be Colorado. They're going under a new head coach and Prime and everything, but I mean, Colorado was absolutely the worst Power 1 or Power 5 division football team last year across the
They
board.
were so bad they made their own division of Power 1.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, exactly. So even then, I mean, even if Prime brings in his own players and everything like that, I mean, they were still a super, super bad football team last year. Not that we were any better, but we were 3 wins better than they were for sure. But I think right now 4-8, 5-7. I'm sure that'll go up once fall camp hits, and I'll be chugging more Kool-Aid. But
not already.
Yeah, I know. But just until Rule and Nebraska proves that they can beat the teams that they should beat within your division, Northwestern. I mean, Illinois is getting better, but I mean, you absolutely have to beat your Northwestern, Illinois, Purdue teams every single year. I mean, there's just not an excuse of what Nebraska is in their football program and their talent that you should be losing those teams every single year or making them close. But yeah, that's where I'm sticking right now, is anywhere between 4 or 5 win season right now. But again, I see the path to 6 wins there. It's just, can Nebraska finally overcome coaching mistakes, those late game mistakes that, cost them so many games, which is why the podcast is named rightfully so. Is you look at Scott's 3-9 season, and obviously you turn 1 or 2 plays of each of those lost games into right decisions, and Nebraska's a easily 10-11 win team that year. But it's just until Nebraska proves that they can do that right now, that's kind of where I'm sitting at the moment.
Yeah, I that.
I think for me, where I'm sitting is like, it's going to be interesting to see whether it's a talent disparity or a coaching disparity between the last few years, because it seems like we've been, I mean, there's obviously a few exceptions, but we've been in a lot of games for the most part. And so just like you said, Andy, turning a couple of those games around, making 1 or 2 heads up plays instead of shooting ourselves in the foot instead, could change the entire season. And so obviously I'm going to lean a little more optimistic.
Our resident optimistic Kool-Aid chugger.
I just pulled up the schedule, and it's like we have Michigan as pretty much the only de facto ranked team, maybe Wisconsin.
That will play. Yeah, Wisconsin's going to be a question mark too. So
they're going under their own coaching change.
Because I mean, there's no Ohio State on the schedule. We I think that opening stretch at Minnesota at Colorado is going to be rough. But then we get this 3 home against Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, Michigan. Michigan will be tough, but after that, I mean, it's just kind of trying to beat the Big Ten West, and then your crossover games against Maryland and Michigan State. We'll see if Michigan State actually rebounds, but Maryland hasn't exactly been a powerhouse of a football team, so I'm I'm not going undefeated, unfortunately. I'm sorry, Jet. I value my credibility. But I could see a feasible 6 to 8 wins. I think somewhere in that range is definitely possible.
Get that the path is definitely there.
Well,
it's just will they not shoot themselves in the foot?
Kind of like I said, just seeing if it is that talent versus coaching, and if because we're returning a lot of, or at least a fair amount of players, whether we can actually just coach them up to be in the right place at the right time is gonna be easy schedule, definitely undefeated. I'm gonna need just a couple more cups of Kool-Aid before I go that far, but
just a couple.
Michigan would have to walk into Lincoln 0-4, 0-5 for me to be fairly confident that we could beat them.
It could happen. I mean, it's college football, man. Anything can happen. All right. I guess that leaves me. So I'm going to do the hot take, and I'm going to say 11-1. No,
close to undefeated.
No, I'm kidding.
The one loss to Louisiana Tech, right?
Oh God.
Hey,
I don't know how I'd feel about that.
Hey. After Georgia Southern last year, I realized nothing's off the table. Now, granted, that's probably due to other things, but I think Rule might be able to handle a team like Georgia Southern if we were to play them. So Louisiana Tech, I think we can just chalk that up as an automatic W. I can't wait for people to just record that for a few seconds I just said, and then if something goes wrong, be like, "You said this."
You're giving other teams bulletin board materials.
Yeah.
They all definitely are tuning into us.
These guys don't know what's up. Anyway, no, I think I'm with you guys. I think six wins is what I see. I don't really have much of a good reason as to why. My head is actually telling me that I should maybe go 4-8 as a prediction, but I don't know. 6-6 just sounds. I think we're going to see. It's going to be growing pains, obviously, because it's a new coach, all that. And like you said, Nate, could very well be a talent thing. I think the talent is there, but we won't know. But I think it'll be interesting. It's gonna be a very interesting year, especially now that the curse has been lifted. I really see no path to failure here. But no, I think 6 wins is where I'm at. It seems like we can, finally pull that out, and and 6 wins would get us a bowl game, correct?
Yeah, as far as I know, that hasn't changed.
Well, no, I'm just saying. Yeah, I couldn't remember. My brain's not entirely working right today. So, yeah, that's it. I think
I forgot Purdue. Yeah, Purdue. Braum is out of Purdue too, so they're also going through a coaching change.
Yep.
So
well, do they have who's the guy that played there for 32 years recently?
Oh, they're the quarterback? Or...
Yeah, what was his what was his name?
Yeah.
Yes, he's not there. So maybe we'll finally have
he's finally done.
Him and who's the other one? Sean Clifford.
Oh,
he's
finally done too.
Yeah, so it's granted, it doesn't look like we play Penn State, so we would.
I was going to say that we haven't played Penn State in a while, but he's finally done playing football too.
All right. I don't really have anything else, guys. Anybody have anything else they wanted to bring up?
Well, I mean, that's, again, you grain of salt for the spring game and what you can take away from it. But now it's kind of just monitoring the next couple of weeks of after the players sit down with the staff and kind of determine what their role is going to be going into the summer and into the fall, is who's going to transfer out, who's transferring in type thing. So, I mean, I won't be shocked to see if like a couple notable names enter the portal out of Nebraska, just based on how many good running backs we have, how big our QB room is. I mean, for sure, a couple, at least one is going to leave that room, but it won't surprise me if we see a couple notable names into the portal in the next couple weeks at all. But outside of that, I mean, just probably slipping more Kool-Aid as the summer goes on until we get to August and fall camp and get things rolling.
Sip more Kool-Aid and eat more Runza.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, the
Absolutely.
Nebraska way, baby. Well,
absolutely.
Right on. I guess I don't have anything else that I thought. Now we just have the excruciatingly long 4-month wait.
Yep.
So,
and we'll probably announce when we are going to put out. We'll do for sure a preview of before the Minnesota game podcast.
Preview,
yeah. So we'll probably announce when we'll be planning to tape that at some point before the Minnesota game.
Right on.
And do like our official season predictions and everything we've heard from fall camp at that point. Hopefully we'll know a starting quarterback by then. We may not. I don't know.
Night before.
It might wait until the night before. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think for our first live show, I'd say
pretty good.
Bad. Maybe next time I'll make sure I have the right toggles switched so we don't have to set up a whole new stream real quick. But hey,
you
live and you learn, growing pains and all. So, all right. Well, with that, we're going to sign off and we will see you guys in the fall. And as always, we'll leave you with the classic line of if it's a possibility, it's a Nebraskability.